You are listening to the Taps and Teas Show, weekly conversations for people passionate about marketing, golf, and craft beer. Marty is the co-founder of Bad Rhino, an award-winning digital marketing agency helping golf and craft beer brands get real results in social media marketing. Here is your host, Marty McDonald.
Hey everybody, this is Marty McDonald, and welcome to another episode of Taps and Teas. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, wow, you know what? I should probably hire a social media agency, but I'm not really sure why. And that's cool. That's probably one of the main questions that we get at first is, doesn't matter what business it is. When people want to ask us like, well, what do you do? You know, how do you do this? Or you might be sitting there thinking, well, I think I want an agency, but I need social media, but I can do this on my own. And that's really a common belief, but it's also a myth. So first off, let's just get a couple things out of the way. Social media needs to be part of your marketing strategy. It's 2018. The numbers, statistics prove that it's very helpful for brand awareness, gaining new leads. You can also have community outreach. You can start to build just an email list. You can stay in touch with current, past, and former customers. And there's billions of users that are collectively across all social platforms. People are spending time there. So they spend their time, and your potential customers spending time checking their phones on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and a whole laundry list of social media channels. And like I said, you might be sitting there thinking about, well, I could probably handle this in-house, or we're taking care of it well enough, or so you might think. So many times, most people want to communicate, and they want to see that communication happen via social media. They want to have their expectations met if they have an issue with your product or service. And that can be hard to keep up with, especially when you're trying to close business, actually meet client demand, and doing all that. Social media becomes a giant time suck. So let's talk about why you might look at hiring an agency. Well, the first one is expertise. Managing social media for business is very different than managing something on your personal page or personal brand that's just there for fun, you know, family stuff and things like that. You have to think like you're representing your brand. You know, you have to know the vision and the voice. You also have to think about overall company goals, how social media fits into those goals, then certain things like how are you going to get it all done? How are you going to actually measure ROI? What is ROI? So basically you need the knowledge, experience, and creativity to work, but you also need to have time to do it. And that'll be the next one. But with that expertise is, are you really going to research how to do it? And this is where I see most small business owners or people trying to do it on their own is they'll spend 30 days researching something and then try to implement it. But then social media changes so fast that in 30 days, whatever you're trying to do might actually be obsolete. I mean, just in 2018 alone, I'm recording this in February, just in the first few weeks of 2018, Facebook made massive changes. And if you're not keeping up to that and don't have that expertise, you're going to get lost in the shuffle and then get frustrated with your social media results or lack thereof. So the expertise is number one. Number two, you're going back to that time. You know, what do you actually have time to do? Social media is super, super time consuming. You're the business owner. You know, you're running the business. Daily task of social media, you have to not only post, but, you know, share and create all that content as well. But you also have to engage with the followers. You have to take a look at analytics. There's incoming messages that you might have to. Then you have to then plan for the next week or the next day. So there's a content calendar. Then you want to incorporate things like video and pictures. There's a lot of moving parts to it. So you have to think about how that fits into your business and your daily plan for sure, because how are you going to do that with everything else that you have going on? The second thing, or third thing rather, is access to tools. Like at Bad Rhino, we have a lot of different paid tools, not only for scheduling, but also for different images, different contest software, CRM, different reporting platforms, analytics, and a bunch of other stuff. And at agency level, The tools are very valuable. So we at Bad Rhino can help you manage your social media and get the most out of it. And we're already using them. Our team is already using them. So there's no need for you to purchase them, which adds to your cost. Not only are you then paying for your own ads, but those tools are pretty expensive. You don't want to get the cheap ones. The cheap ones are, I'm not going to knock them, and it depends on what your idea of cheap is, but they're not going to give you the depth of information that some of the high-end tools that we use will give you. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at that and you're assessing an agency, understand what they're doing to not only post on your behalf and what they're using to schedule and then collect analytics, but also, ask them about the tools, what tools they're using and seeing what the reports come from and making sure that they are leveraging the tools, because that's a big part of it. When you hire an agency such as Bad Rhino, you're going to get a dedicated team. You're also going to get consistency through your content. But more importantly, you get consistency of actually posting regularly, having a consistent voice, a look, a feel, not only on the content part, but through every single social media channel. Plus, you have people that are more passionate about social media and marketing that understand not only the tools, as we mentioned, but also any of the latest trends, so that that time that we were talking about earlier doesn't get sucked in by the business owner to learn what the new algorithm changes are on Facebook. We're already doing that on a daily basis. Then we also will put together a comprehensive strategy that is going to include what else you're doing within your marketing. Maybe you're doing events, or you're speaking at events, or you go to Chamber of Commerce events, or maybe you're speaking at a big national conference, or you're attending a national conference. We can help tie into those things. Maybe you run Google AdWords and how that works. We do that as well as an agency, but I know a lot of small and mid-sized businesses have different partners that they work with. How we tie that into your SEO, how we tie that into your video content that you might be creating at your golf course or in your tap room. How do we make sure that's on a schedule? How do we make sure it stays consistent? How do we make sure it stays, very vibrant and excellent content that represents your brand appropriately? The last thing is the ad budget. Social media is pay to play. I think a common theme through many of these podcast episodes you'll hear is like organic is dead. And that's not 100% true, but it's really small. And you want to make sure that your content gets seen. So you want to build in the strategies of not only building in an ad plan, but where do you use a boosted post? How do you and when do you post something on Instagram, and make sure that that's on a paid part as well.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing on the show and want more, head on over to tapsandtees.info and get our free report with game-changing tips and strategies straight to your inbox. Just enter your info and stop being stuck with no marketing plan.
So all that is really going to make sure that we're targeting ultimately your specific audience and making sure the content is talking to that audience, and then making sure the paid ads are working in there. So just those 5 things of why you should look at a social media agency is a lot. And to be successful on social media, you have to have a very clear strategy, and more importantly, you have to have the time to dedicate to it. You have to use social media to communicate a clear message and intent to the community that you want to build. And then as you start to build that community, you also want to make sure that they stay engaged and that you can keep that very consistent and actually get that ROI. So those are some big things to think about. And the title of this episode is always an interesting one. And it's something that I've led talks off with in the past and have worked on many times. And I'll tell you the story how this title came about too. So it's Why Should I Hire You? And because we aren't full of shit. And I did a talk, and I forget where the first one was. I'm just going to say it was a Chamber of Commerce event. And I think it was a smaller one, but it doesn't matter what event it was, because it happened multiple times. And that's when I started using the tagline. And it's actually going to be on our website as well. And we got there, did our whole setup, started doing, the little piece, when it wasn't too much different than what I just talked about, why you should hire a social media agency, what Bad Rhino did, how we did it, what we were pulling. And then I start to get questions from the audience and started asking different questions. I'm answering them one-to-one from the little stage there. And it was very fascinating, the questions I was getting. And then finally, I just said to this one gentleman, I don't think you're ready for social media. And I said, why don't you just come over later on after everything's done, and I'll tell you why. And I moved on to the next question, and it was very similar stuff. And it was really funny to hear some of the feedback, because everyone was like, this guy was basically saying from, where he was sitting, that he wanted to hire me or my agency. And what he was telling me, I didn't just blow him off and say, hey, I don't think you're ready for social media, just to kind of get him off. And I was honest, because I don't think his business was ready based on the questions he was asking me. So finally, we get all the way through, and he goes, I definitely want to hire you as a consultant, because you're right. We're not ready. And I just said to him, why? And he goes, because you're the first person that just said you're not ready. And he's like, you're not full of shit. He's like, most of the people would try to sell me on something that just wasn't going to work. And that was the first time that ever happened when we did that. And I'm going to talk about integrity and selling in a later podcast, about how we present everything and how we push everything out there and pull it together to create great plans for people. So then I incorporated the "we're not full of shit" line into my next presentation. And I put it right at the top. It was like the second or third slide. And I said, why you should hire a bad rhino, because we aren't full of shit. And everyone started laughing. And then I said, does anybody know why I put that in there? And nobody really knew. I didn't expect them to know. But I was just coming at them from a place of honesty. I think a lot of times what you hear out there is, do I hire an agency? Do I do it myself? And you get sold a bill of goods like it's a silver bullet to your business. I never approach anything like that. My partner never approaches anything like that. And I know that's one of the main reasons that we have a lot of long-term clients that speak very highly about us, because we don't sugarcoat it. And it's like, hey, you want to only spend $1,000 on ads this month? You're probably not going to get too many results. You really need to be here, because this is how many clicks you'll get. And whether that's 2,000 or whether that's 10,000 or whether that's 1,200 based off the initial 1,000, we just want to be honest with them, because we don't want to waste their money or anybody's money not getting the results that they want. So it doesn't help to say, oh yeah, let's try it for $500. And you get nothing when you know the number for the right amount of traffic and everything is going to be somewhere higher than that. So it doesn't help if you just kind of lie about it, right? So the same thing goes where we had another instance where a client came back to us and said, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And I said, I think that's a wonderful idea. And he was like, well, I think that might be the end of our relationship, though, because I can't invest too in there. And it was a video strategy, and it was just going to all be on YouTube. And I said to them the same thing. I said, well, let's work something out and let's see what we can do first and foremost. But I think you investing in these videos at this stage of your evolution in business is probably a little bit more important than trying to spend all the money on ad spend or having the other content created. And he wanted to work, basically the bottom line was he wanted to work with a friend of his that was a video producer and couldn't afford both at the same time. And it was great, because what happened was you gain credibility. You're not just sitting there going, well, I think you should just spend all the money, and how dare you come back at me and say, I can't believe we're going to do this. And, and just be honest. It was just like, yeah, you know what? I think the videos are really going to work for you. Why don't you do those? And then we'll figure something out in the meantime so that you're covered on social media so it doesn't die. But at the same time, be honest and be open. And the last thing I'll say about that is running down this client presentation. And this wasn't an open one. This was part of a proposal process where we do a mini presentation. And we finally got to the point where it was like, okay, here's the price, here's everything. And he was like, well, I want to talk to you about price. And I was like, if you want to talk about price, I'm out. I'm done. I'm giving you my best price right now. And they were like, whoa, no, that's not what we mean. We just want to figure out what we're getting here. And I was like, that's fine. And then a couple months later, we were working on everything, and they had signed the deal, and they just came back to us and they say, you won that because you said right away, this is what you're going to get, and this is what it cost me. And I can't do it for any less. So if you want to negotiate on price, it's kind of tough. And those are hard conversations to have. And I think anybody listening to this that's looking to hire an agency should consider those 5-6 reasons that I mentioned earlier in this podcast to evaluate who and what they're going to do, and then who they might hire for that work. But also just understand that there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just posting and hoping. It's posting and doing things to make sure that you get things done. So that's it for today. I appreciate everyone listening, and I look forward to having you on the next show, which will be Social Media with a Strategy, kind of continuing this conversation. And until next time, thanks for listening to Taps and Tees.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.